What is human nature? What defines us? This is something many philosophers have struggled with. Are we inherently good or inherently evil? While it's no philosophy textbook, many of these questions are looked at in Undertale. Undertale is a Kickstarter RPG released in 2015 that was praised for its great storytelling, amazing programming, and stellar soundtrack. It sat beside Bloodborne as one of my favorite games for 2015, and I found I thought about it a lot more than I actually played it. This is because its storytelling and gameplay raise some very interesting questions. But before we get to that, what is the story of Undertale about? And if it wasn't obvious, spoilers ahead. So if you haven't played this game, do yourself a favor, close this video, and go play it. This is not a game you want spoiled. In Undertale, you play as the fallen child who, fell into a world of monsters called the Underground. The monsters were locked away there long ago after a war with the humans. While adventuring through the Underground in an attempt to return to the surface, you encounter the likes of an evil flower, a goat mom, a pair of skeletons who enjoy bad puns, a flamboyant killer robot, and a reptile with a thing for a fishwoman. Man, it feels like I'm describing a bad acid trip. But this weirdness is almost typical for most JRPGs. What's less typical is the combat system used. Early on, you were taught that not only are you able to attack using a time button press and avoid enemy attacks using a shmup-like minigame, but you can also spare monsters. Depending on how you act towards each monster, you are given the option to spare them, though you lose any XP that you may gain from this encounter. From this point forward, how you choose to play the game greatly affects the story and how you are seen by characters within the game. Are you going to be merciful to these monsters, or will you defeat them to become stronger? And more importantly, what does your decisions possibly say about you? Now, unlike most morality choices in video games, Undertale doesn't act like morality is based on a single choice, nor does it spell it out for you. The game wants you to play non-violently, but doesn't hold your hand and make you play nice like it's baby's first RPG. It drops hints throughout the early section of the game, but it always gives you control in battles. It's because of this that most people only got the neutral ending the first time around, unless they had it spoiled for them. And if you're anything like me, you probably killed Toriel the first time around thinking it was your only option. This is because you have to spare Toriel multiple times with no real progress to show for it. The game wants you to attack out of frustration. It isn't until you meet Flowey afterwards that you realize the mistake you've made. But even if you reset, the game doesn't let you forget your sins. The programming remembers what you did in previous playthroughs, and characters remind you of your past mistakes. So does that mean you can't make up for them? You can, but the game wants you to know there's consequences to your actions. Near the end of the game, you meet Sans in the Judgment Hall. Here he explains what EXP and love actually mean. EXP is an acronym for execution points, a way for quantifying the pain you inflict on others. It also increases your love. Love itself is also an acronym for level of violence. Not really sure what that extra E stands for. Sans says this is a way of measuring someone's capacity to hurt. The more you kill, the easier it becomes to distance yourself. The more you distance yourself, the less it will hurt. The more easily you can bring yourself to hurt others. This is a comment on the trope of grinding in RPGs, especially in the Genocide Run of Undertale, but it's also a comment on violence in general. This is why the Pacifist Run doesn't allow you to grow stronger, because it requires you to harm and kill in order to do so. To go through the Pacifist Run requires a lot more than simply avoiding fights, though. Due to the game's spare mechanic, you have to learn the patterns of each monster and act a certain way in order to spare them. This takes a little analyzing to understand how you need to act towards certain monsters, whether it be flexing off with Aaron or getting close to Sundar Plane. The boss fights take this a step further by making you find unique requirements to win, like running away from Undine until she calms down, or raising Metaten's ratings for his final show. Another requirement for the Pacifist Run is that you must connect to the boss monsters and befriend them. This includes going on a date with Papyrus, hanging out with Undine, and learning about the research of Alphys. By doing these, the characters grow and change. Papyrus learns that he doesn't want to sacrifice a friend in order to join the Royal Guard, Undine realizes that she doesn't have to fight to be strong, and Alphys learns to believe in herself and face her mistakes. This is all echoed in the final fight with Azrael Dreamer. After your friends are absorbed by Azrael and you find you can't reach your save file, you are given the chance to instead save your friends. While your friends' souls have reverted back to what they were like before you met them, by doing acts you did with them, you can bring them back to who they become. A question I've seen echoed a bit in regards to Undertale and the Pacifist Run is why there's no problem with the monsters attacking you. Why must the protagonist be the better one? Well, that's because the monsters are acting in self-defense. Going by the lore of the game, humans are inherently stronger than monsters. The protagonist is a child and can still easily defeat almost any monster with nothing but sticks and ballet shoes. After the humans sealed them away in the underground, monsters began to believe humans to be evil, especially since Asgore declared that any human that enters must be killed. In the eyes of the monsters, something that could kill them has just entered their world, like a bear wandering into a high school. The monsters are scared of what a human might do. Plus, the protagonist has the ability to walk away from any conflict. Unless you wish to create conflict, like in the Genocide Run. To initiate the Genocide Run, you first have to clear the ruins area of monster encounters. The toughest part of this isn't actually defeating the monsters, it's finding them all. The game is effectively telling you to stop by making the encounters more sparse the closer you get to clearing an area. Basically, you find less monsters near the end because there are less monsters in the area. They are trying to hide from you. After defeating the last monster in the ruins, you are left with silence. The area no longer plays its previous theme, and it's replaced by an ambient silence to remind you that nobody else came. As you continue down this path, you will find the game changes. Certain monsters don't appear in the overworld, towns like Snowden are found empty, and shops are even abandoned, so you can steal items and gold if you wish. The game almost feels like it's become a horror. Another thing that starts to change is how you feel about killing monsters in the game. As monster encounters become more rare, you will stop caring and be more annoyed, just wanting the last few to finally appear so you can kill them. This also applies to the boss fights. Characters you cared about like Undine and Sans become sources of frustration due to how strong they are, with Undine becoming a true hero and Sans bending the rules of the game. They become roadblocks on your path of genocide. With each attempt you care a little less about them, and you just want them to die already. And with this you've made Sans right. You have become the monster. As you've gained XP, you've raised your love. As you've grown stronger, it has become easier to cause harm to others and easier to distance yourself from it. You might feel sad the first time you clear an area and nobody else came, but by the end, clearing an area feels like checking a box on a to-do list. But what makes players want to go through the genocide route? It's not out of self-defense or confusion about the game's rules. You have to actively pursue this path. More than likely, it's out of curiosity. It's because you can. You want to see what happens in this game, even if it means killing these characters you've grown to care about. And could there be a worse reason to kill? But even if you didn't do the Genocide Run and instead went to YouTube to see what happened, you aren't much better. You wanted to see what happened just like the people who played it, but were too weak to do it yourself. At least that's what Flowey thinks. Now, if you actually complete the Genocide Run and attempt to play the game again, you are asked to sell your soul in order to rebuild the world you had already destroyed. This means that your sins will forever be crawling on your back. When you complete the pacifist run after this, it's shown that the monster still lives with the avatar. You can reset the game all you want, but your decisions will follow you. But whichever path you choose to take, you need determination. In order to achieve the pacifist or genocide endings, you have to continually be good or evil. You don't make one choice that defines you as good or evil entirely. At any time you can decide to spare instead of fight, or vice versa. You have to choose to spare or kill every time you encounter a monster, and depending on your continued choices, this can show who the true monster is.